Hey, we are two Star Wars nerds, and we are continuing to talk about A New Hope. But before we get going, make sure you hit that red subscribe button because we have giveaways at every single one of our sub goals. As of the recording of this video, our next sub goal is at 250 subscribers. But you know what? Even if that's come and gone, we have more giveaways coming right up, so make sure you hit that red subscribe button because we just make a bunch of Star Wars content that we love to talk about.
Yes.
But today what we're going to do is we're gonna offer hopefully a unique perspective on Star Wars A New Hope, and we are going to be talking about how we as 90s babies have nostalgia for A New Hope. And what I think is more importantly, like, why kids need to start with watching A New Hope. We think that's very important. But obviously you can see our cat wants to get in on this discussion. So why don't you start this off with, because you're just having a conversation with your dad about this very thing.
Yeah.
So why don't you start it off with how all of this came to be and starting to get really nostalgic about A New Hope.
Yeah, because, we just finished our prequel series, and we wanted to start the original trilogy next. Like you said, we're going to continue making videos forever, probably on the prequels and on the original trilogy, just because we love them so much. But I was just thinking about it. I was trying to think when I first watched A New Hope, or when I was first introduced to Star Wars, and I literally can't remember, like, a time where I didn't know Star Wars. And so I texted my dad, and then we saw him today, and I asked him like, what was A New Hope my first movie, and he said yes. And I asked when I first watched it, and he said it was probably between like 4 and 6, somewhere in there. He didn't remember the exact, but I was like, well, that makes sense, because that's kind of when you start developing, real memories and stuff. But I remember just loving it from the beginning. Like, normally I mean, even as an adult, I'm very picky with my movies. If I'm not entertained, I'm done. I don't want to watch it again. I don't want to watch new things. I don't want to watch things that don't interest me. To me, it's like, I don't want to waste my time. Like, this doesn't...
I'm the opposite. I'll watch whatever, but...
If it doesn't interest me or pique my attention within a couple of minutes, I'm ready to move on. And so if I'm like that as an adult, imagine me as a child.
Yeah. And
for A New Hope to, hold my... And I'm sure I wasn't sitting there glued to the TV as a 3-4-year-old or whatever the age was, but I watched it enough to understand the main parts of the story. And I remember, eating my macaroni and cheese and my hot dog, mixed together, watching Star Wars. And I remember loving Luke. I remember loving Leia, and just R2-D2 and Chewbacca, just all the characters. Like, I just remember, and you get that, like, that nostalgia feeling when you think back, and they're just such good memories. And I'm thankful that even though I wasn't born in the 70s, that I still got to be introduced to Star Wars. Even though I love the prequels, before the prequels came out, like, my first and only, really the only thing that I could be exposed to was the original trilogy. And I'm thankful for that, because I think, like you said, it's the perfect place to start and introduce Star Wars, because it really is the beginning. But yeah, when I think back to my childhood, a lot of it has to do with Star Wars. And, there's a lot of great memories of just with my dad and with my sister and my best friend. Like, I just loved Star Wars my entire childhood. So it definitely brings me back and gets me excited and, going down memory lane. So even when I watch A New Hope now, I think of my childhood, and so it just makes it even better.
For sure. And, what's interesting is I was also like 4, 5, and 6. That's what I was introduced to in terms of Star Wars, and that's where I started out. And where I really start forming really solid memories about Star Wars is the prequels for me, and then just continuing as I was getting a little older, watching the original trilogy. But even what was interesting is you grew up more so watching almost like the unedited, like, theatrical cuts, the VHS releases from the 80s. And for me, I grew up actually watching the special edition, just because like when I was actually starting to get introduced to it, that's just what my dad owned, and that's what he chose to show me. And my dad loved and still does love Star Wars like so much. It's both of our dads, you know, and it's just so crazy. And I just, what I vaguely remember as a kid, you know, and just for frame of reference, I was born in 1992. So when I'm starting to watch this stuff, I'm like 5 years old. And when I was watching this, like, I just remember, like, it was really mind blowing as a kid. There was so much stuff that went over my head, to be honest. Yeah. But what I love is that even as a kid, I could get into A New Hope, and each time I viewed it as I got older, and sometimes, you know, like still, like even this week, watched it like 2 or 3 times, and even in the past month, watched it even more than that.
Right.
But every time I watch it, I'm finding something new, or I'm connecting more dots in the whole and the totality of Star Wars. And so, and I mean, I had, like, my dad had toys, and he got me toys and stuff, and same for you. And, you know, you even got some, like, kind of cool news about some, like, legit retro Star Wars toys today with your dad, which was cool. But
he told me that he was going to bring me this, like, Luke Barbie doll type of thing.
Action figure.
But it was not like the action figures, like, it's shaped like a Barbie. And I used to, because I thought it was my dad, so I'd make fun of him and be like, oh, where's your Luke Barbie, when I was a little girl.
Messed up.
But I loved that thing, and me and my sister were always playing with it. And he just told me today he was going to bring it for me, and he's like, oh yeah, it was yours. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't remember it being mine, but I'll take it. So yeah, I'm super excited.
It's like OG.
It's like he's in the yellow vest at the end of A New Hope when he's getting his medal. So it's that little
awesome.
Luke Barbie. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
Stop saying Luke Barbie. I get what you're saying.
It's not an action figure to me though.
Okay.
It's
Luke
different.
Barbie.
My Luke Barbie.
All right, whatever. And you kissed it.
I did.
That's what you're leaving out. You're leaving out that you kissed it. So part of being a 90s baby and feeling nostalgic is that you kissed Luke Skywalker.
I did.
As a Barbie.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
And my dad's like, oh, yeah, you didn't seem very interested. And even when I told him today, I was like, oh, I was interested in the Barbie.
Yeah, you were. Yeah. But, you know, this is what's so cool is that thinking back to Star Wars, like, I loved, like, don't get me wrong, I loved, like, Hercules and Peter Pan.
Oh, yeah.
I loved all of these other things as a kid, you know, varying release dates for movies and TV shows that I enjoyed. But Star Wars was one of the few that, like, kept with me once it was off the screen.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted I wanted more toys. And I remember
And the Legos.
Yeah, the Legos were cool. I remember, though, my dad had this old school, I don't know if it was like Kenner or like, I mean, now they call them like vintage collection, but it was this like Darth Vader helmet that held all of these small action figures, and you could open it up, and it had like all of these people from the original trilogy and stuff. And as a kid, I mean, like, that was so cool to crack open, and, you know, they didn't look super awesome, but they were fun to play with, and as a kid I didn't care. But what's so amazing is that the same thing that captivated kids and adults alike in the 70s is doing the same thing 2 decades later.
Right.
And another 2 decades later, actually 3 decades later now, you know, we have a son that's almost 1 year old, and here's the thing, we don't let him watch TV, but whenever that Star Wars theme comes on, like, he will, like, turn
and
like,
point.
Yeah, he loves it. We don't let him watch it, but
well, I mean, I don't think he could sit.
No,
he's 9 months old, so he can't watch him.
But one day we will, and we've been talking about this. Like, where will we start showing him Star Wars? And we've landed on A New Hope.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is I think that's the way it was intended to be seen.
Yeah.
You could argue all day long about why and when things were released, But I think there's a beauty to starting at A New Hope, because it's so accessible and it's self-contained and it just gets you excited for Star Wars. Like as a kid, seeing the Death Star explode and seeing the Force and lightsabers and Darth Vader and Luke, and I mean there's stuff like that even went over my head, you know, and like I'm like, man, I'm glad I don't remember, you know, Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru burning up, you know, as a kid. Like as a kid I was probably like, whoa, like that's freaky, but you know, just kind of like moved on and forgot about it. But, you know, Jawas, like love Jawas. C-3PO and R2-D2 as a kid, like this, it was awesome. Like my imagination came out onto the screen. And so as a final talking point for this, you know, obviously there's so much about the toys and, you know, even the books and the magazines as kids that you would get into. But when we're thinking about our son, or maybe even just for those of you watching, thinking about introducing Star Wars to someone, a child, for the first time, we're going to do A New Hope. But what version, it's funny we even have to ask that question, what version do you want to start with? I already know what I want to start with, but what version would you like to introduce our son to?
The despecialized one.
Okay, so like the Harmy's despecialized or the Project
4K is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think for me, Project 4K 77, he's going to be a hipster Star Wars kid, that's for sure. He's going to be starting off with Project 4K.
But I'm fine, like I'm not like hardcore against the changes either. Like I'm fine with him watching them. But
he will not start with the Disney Plus McClunky version. No. That is for sure.
No, absolutely. But I'm not against any of. I prefer the original, but I'll show him all of them.
Yeah, you know, for me,
except for maybe that.
I want him to see that Han shot first. Yes, that's important. I actually don't want him to see Jabba until later. You know, like I want that. I want Return of the Jedi to be the first introduction of Jabba. You know, but you have to do, it's a lot of hard work to keep that to keep that contained, because it has been changed so much. And not that I'm against Jabba's scene necessarily, but you know, especially things like, it's just cool to see it not cluttered and to just see it the way it was intended to be seen, you know, in 1977.
I do have one clarifying thing though. Yeah. So my dad had both sets of the VHSs, so I watched both. Yeah. But even when we were talking, I'm like, I barely remember the Jabba and Han scene. Like, I'm like, oh, when did this get here? As I got older, I'm like, I don't remember this ever being here. And then I found out that it was updated. But I did grow up on both of them.
And man, I remember like this, we had this like VHS cabinet, you know, there's like the TV like in this big entertainment center thing, and you know, we had the shelf with like the glass door that opened with all the VHS tapes and stuff. And I remember like there was drawers with VHS, but that glass door had the special edition box set with like the gold, like gold and black like casing or whatever. And I just remember as a kid, it was like so cool to grab that and like
so special.
Pull it out, pull out your movie. It was already rewound, you know, stick it in and press play. Like that was so cool.
Is rewound? Is that a word?
I don't know. It is now.
You rewounded it?
I didn't rewound it. Someone else rewinded it, and it was rewound, right? Okay. Chat, let me know, or chat comment section, let me know. Is rewound a word? I feel like it is. Anyway, nonetheless, that was cool to watch it on VHS. We still have VHS copies of it.
We do.
Yeah, maybe he'll start with those.
Yeah.
Learn the hard way. Who knows? But nonetheless, you know, what's so cool about this is I think there's a whole new generation of Star Wars fans that are going, hopefully, to be introduced to Star Wars through A New Hope. But we would love to know, how did you get introduced to Star Wars? Was it A New Hope? Was it something else? And what are some of, like, let's just get nostalgic. Let's get into the feels, you know, like what what brings you back when
Yeah.
you think about watching A New Hope for the first time or watching it as a kid? Like, that would be such a cool discussion in the comments.
Yeah.
But, you know, with that, we are 2 Star Wars nerds. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button because we have a lot of cool content we're going to be making about the original trilogy
We
and the
think it's cool.
prequels. Yeah, for what it's worth, we think it's cool. So, you know, maybe you will too. But with that, may the Force be with you always.
Always.